Well, our first guest is an entrepreneur, so we're going to ask him about that. He's the founder and CEO of Valisure, is that right?
That's correct.
Valishure's state-of-the-art system enables consumers to receive pre-screened and validated medications, ensuring quality and consistency for patients. David Light, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So healthcare, man, that's a difficult space to get into.
It is. It is. There's a lot of factors. It's a very colluded system, but a lot of people are trying to break into it, and it's an exciting place that's really poised for change.
So why do you think we're poised for change in healthcare? Because, you know, it takes up nearly a fifth of our economy now. It's a huge driver of cost. It's bankrupting local, state governments, corporations, etc., everything under the sun. What role do entrepreneurs play in disrupting healthcare?
So I think you basically answered a lot of the question right there. I mean, it needs to be changed. There's a lot of issues with it. The costs keep going up and up, and quality isn't always there. And so we're tackling it from the medication standpoint, developing new technology to really address that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are trying. A lot of digital health is a big field these days. A lot of big companies have already broken through on that, and I think there's a lot more room for continued innovation and impact.
What are some of the new innovative things that are kind of rolling out maybe this year, next year? Have you heard anything in the pipeline that we should all look out for?
So I've heard of this company called Valisure that make a really big impact.
Pitch his own company.
Of course.
But I think, in general, you hear a lot in digital health, a lot of things going online. I think especially the pharmacy industry is really the biggest retail industry that hasn't really gone online. And so there's been a lot of movement there, a lot of new startups in that space, and we're obviously looking to make a big impact there with a very unique component of having chemically validated medications that we can bring to consumers, but a lot of activity in that space.
So tell us the problem. So the problem is generics are all over the place, is that correct?
That is correct. Well, about 80–90% of the medications that people take are generic in the United States. Of the 4.5 billion prescriptions that we have in this country, about 80% of the drugs that are FDA approved, legal drugs, are manufactured in India and China. So there's a lot of regulatory issues there. I mean, ultimately, the FDA, the entire FDA, is a $5 billion organization. So it's hard for them to be everywhere, especially overseas. And
so there's a quality control issue.
There absolutely is. There's lots of variability in medications, and we're not just talking about counterfeits, but every time you go to a pharmacy, especially the big box pharmacies, it's a new lot. It's often a new manufacturer, especially if it's generic, and things can change pretty dramatically, which is actually how Valisure even started.
Wow. Do you trust your medication, Monica?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I think I'd rather have it chemically verified, if you ask me.
And that's actually how we began. Was a good friend of mine, buddy from Yale, that we were classmates together, that called me up and was telling me about all the problems that he had with his own anti-epileptic medication, obviously very important. And he was basically telling me, listen, I refill my medication every month, and every once in a while I feel just totally different that month. I get all these side effects, get relapses sometimes, and his doctors tell him, listen, there's variability in medications. And again, we're not just talking about counterfeits, just things change over, and just because it's authentic doesn't mean that it's quality. And there's nothing that we, the doctors, can do about it. But he called me up after a particularly bad episode and was telling me all these issues, and we basically decided to put our heads together to figure out a way to directly address it. And we developed a new technology, basically applied lasers to pharmaceutical analysis, and are doing something about it.
So what does it do? So basically, what happens if you find out if a medication doesn't pass muster? So you point lasers at it. Okay, the medication is good, bad. Do you throw away the bad medication? Like, what happens?
Right. So we work with business partners to plug into the pharmaceutical supply chain. We do the analysis on every single batch. So even the manufacturers, they only test about 10% of the batches they make, and even when that's overseas. And so when it's bad, it can be reported directly to the FDA, can trigger recalls, and the most important part is that the consumer doesn't have to worry about that. So if you felt medication variability, and we see that not just anti-epileptics or anticonvulsant medications, but antidepressants is a huge one where people often feel these kinds of differences. Various kinds of medication, blood pressure medications, there's a lot of medications out there where people are feeling these effects, and we can directly address that with this kind of technology.
So how do you? So why would businesses be interested in verifying their own defective merchandise?
So I hope businesses are interested.
It's like telling
in
me, David, lasers are going to figure out all your flaws and are going to report to you what garbage you are. So how do you convince businesses of the value of this?
So I think consumers are really demanding quality these days, right?
Yeah.
You already saw it in food, right? GMO-free, locally sourced. All these nutrition information about every single kind of food. Well, you don't get that kind of nutrition information on your life-saving medications. Wouldn't you like to know exactly what's in there?
It's just this white pill bottle that...
Yeah, you get a pill and you just hope that everything is fine. So we want to bring more visibility and quality to consumers.
So who would your ideal customer be? CVS?
So we can plug into the whole gambit of this system, and actually we have a serious partner that we're bringing this to market with. We're going to be launching this summer, so we'll get into a lot more of those details pretty soon. Yeah.
Is it for the manufacturer? Is it for the pharmacies? Is it for what?
So the technology plugs into the system, right, into the pharmaceutical supply chain.
Okay, so it's pharmaceutical companies.
The benefit is for the consumers.
Got it. Because the pharmacy is really just the distribution mechanism.
Right, and they don't check currently.
Isn't that nice to know, Monica?
Yes, yes, that is.
I think she trusts a little bit less.
Your medication could be defective. So far, we've eliminated Facebook and medication. That's basically all of life. Basically, we're on life support. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea, what do? What's your advice for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, sure. So definitely network is an important component. Just because you have an idea, definitely talk to other people about it. Build. Just an idea doesn't mean you can go out and just raise money. You have to build something real. And I think the best advice that I ever got that really resonated was F squared, which stands for effing focus. And I think it's really important in a startup. You can go in so many different directions. You have a cool idea, and you're trying to impact a really big system, but you have to focus. You have to focus on the right market and penetrate and really make an impact on what you're trying to do, and then grow from there.
Well, David Light of Valisure, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you very much for having me.